I never thought my own child would speak to me like that, not in front of everyone, not at our family table. But that Sunday morning, between the pancakes and the pouring coffee, my daughter turned into someone I didn't recognize. Her name is Lauren, 33, smart, ruthless when she wants something. And that day, she wanted my land. We were all seated in the sunlit dining room I built with my own hands 40 years ago, back when my wife was still alive and the world still made sense. Brunch was our tradition: eggs, sausage, her cinnamon rolls, laughter echoing off wood-paneled walls. But this time, something felt different from the start. She didn't greet me with a kiss. No light conversation about work. Just a quiet tension brewing behind her cold, businesslike smile. My grandson, Milo, 7 years old, was coloring dinosaurs at the far end of the table. He's the only reason I still try to smile some days. Lauren waited until we were halfway through the meal. Her tone was sweet at first, deceptive even. "Dad," she said, setting down her fork, "we should talk about the land." I blinked. "The land? You know, the North 40. Behind the barn. It's just sitting there. We could do something with it. Sell it. Or I could take it over. Build something real." I set down my coffee. "That land isn't just dirt, Lauren. It's where your mother planted her sunflowers. It's where you learned to ride your first bike." She gave a short laugh, sharp as broken glass. "Exactly. That was 30 years ago. Nostalgia won't pay taxes." My son-in-law, Peter, stiffened beside her. He didn't say a word, but I saw the guilt on his face. He knew she shouldn't be doing this. Not like this. "I'm not selling the land," I said calmly. "I didn't ask you to sell it. I'm asking you to sign it over to me," she said, voice suddenly loud. "You're old, Dad. You don't need it. You live in one room now." A silence dropped over the table like a stone. I looked at her, really looked. My daughter, my blood, her eyes lit not with love, but greed. My hand trembled slightly as I picked up my napkin and wiped my mouth. "You have a good job. A house. You don't need my land." Her voice rose again. "You're going to die, Dad. Sooner or later. Why not make things easier now? Before the government takes it. Before some lawyer turns it into a mess." Milo looked up, confused. "Mommy, why are you yelling at Grandpa?" She ignored him. She was already standing. "You're being selfish. You're clinging to a past that's dead. If you cared about your family, you'd pass it on." Peter reached for her arm, but she pulled away. "Lauren," I said, forcing my voice steady, "this land stays in my name until I die. And then, it will be divided fairly between you and your brother." That's when she lost it. Her hand swept across the table, crashing into the casserole dish. It shattered against the floor, food splattered against my boots. Milo screamed and ducked under the table. "Fair," she spat. "Nothing about my life has been fair. You always loved him more. You always gave him everything. I was never good enough for you." It felt like my lungs deflated, like the floor beneath me cracked open. "I gave you everything I had," I whispered, "even when you pushed me away." But she wasn't listening. She stormed out, heels slamming on the hardwood, Milo trailing after her, crying for her to stop. Peter lingered for a moment, then simply shook his head. "I'm sorry," he muttered, then followed her out. I was left in the echoing silence, the scent of sausage and cinnamon rolls ruined by bitterness in the air. I bent slowly to clean the floor, my knees aching, my hands unsteady. I could still hear her voice in my head. "You're going to die, Dad." Maybe I am. But I never thought I'd lose my child before I left this earth. I didn't hear from Lauren for 3 weeks. Not a call. Not a message. Not even on Father's Day, which came and went with nothing but the buzz of the porch light and the sound of cicadas in the trees. It was quiet out here. Always had been. The kind of quiet that used to feel peaceful. Now it just sounded like abandonment. I busied myself with chores, repairing the fence, checking the roof, brushing cobwebs off the corners of my memory. But at night, the silence turned inward. It asked hard questions. It whispered in my wife's voice. Did we do something wrong? Why does she hate me so much? The land out back grew tall with summer grass, waving in the wind like it didn't know about our fight, or didn't care. The barn stood solid, though the paint was fading. I still visited the spot where I buried her dog, Lauren's first dog, Daisy, beneath the old oak tree. I used to think she'd bring Milo to see it one day. Now I doubted she ever would again. Then one Friday morning, I saw the car. A black SUV, slick and new, crawling up the gravel drive like a shadow. It stopped just short of the porch. 2 men in suits stepped out. I met them at the steps. "Mr. Carlyle," one asked, "we're here to discuss the offer you accepted on the North 40. My stomach dropped. "What offer?" He looked puzzled. "The sale agreement. You signed it last week. Your daughter handled the details." I felt my knees buckle. "No, I didn't sign anything," I told her. He pulled a clipboard from his folder. "We have notarized documents. You can contest it, of course, but the development plans are already in motion. It would be expensive to stop them now." I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, but it wasn't. It was close. Forged, but skillfully. I began, but my words trailed off. They handed me a card. "Call if you change your mind. But construction begins in August." I stood there long after they left, the summer wind rustling through the porch screen, the card crumpling in my hand. She forged my name. She stole the land. And now they were going to bulldoze it. Every memory, every fence post, every sunflower root. Gone. I went inside, sat on the edge of the bed I once shared with my wife, and cried for the second time in 15 years. The first was the day she died. The second was the day I realized my daughter already considered me dead. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the window in my flannel robe, watching the moonlight stretch over the fields like a ghost. The same fields I used to run through as a boy, then walked with my wife, then showed my children how to tend. The land had been passed from my grandfather, to my father, then to me. And now? Now it was being handed to strangers behind my back. I turned the forged documents over in my hand. My name. My signature. Almost perfect. I could hear Lauren's voice again, cold and rational. "You're old, Dad. You don't need it." No, I wasn't dying. But something had died between us. Trust. Family. The sense that blood meant loyalty. All gone, like footprints in a storm. By morning, I made up my mind. I called my lawyer, the same man who helped me draft my will after my wife passed. "David," I said, "I need you out here. Now." By Monday, we were sitting in the parlor, papers spread across the coffee table between us. I explained everything: Brunch, the fight, the visit from the developers. "Technically, this is fraud. Forging a deed is a felony." "I know. If you want to press charges." "She's my daughter." He nodded, understanding but firm. "Then we file a motion to invalidate the sale. That'll trigger a legal hold. No bulldozers." "Not yet." "Do it." He glanced up. "There's one more thing." "What?" "If the court asks for motive, we'll need to show a pattern. That she's done this before. Or intended to." I thought of the way she looked at me that day, like I was an obstacle, not a father. "She did this on purpose," I said. "I'll swear to it under oath." The next week was a blur of filings, notarizations, and long, lonely nights on the porch, waiting for a car that never came. Lauren didn't reach out. Not to apologize. Not to explain. Not even to argue. But word must have gotten around. By Thursday, I received a voicemail from her. Just one sentence. "You have no idea what you've started." No, Dad. No emotion. Just cold fury. I deleted it. The hearing was set for mid-August. David said it could take months to resolve, but at least the land was safe for now. The developers were furious, but legally blocked. No machinery could move until the case was closed. But Lauren didn't stay quiet. She went on the offensive. I started getting calls from neighbors. "She told me you were senile," old Martha from the church said gently. "That you forgot signing the papers and blamed her for it. She's saying you're paranoid," another friend warned. "That you're confused. Unwell." Then, a letter from Child Protective Services showed up. Someone had reported me, claimed I was living in unsafe conditions with a minor. I don't have custody of Milo. He only visits sometimes. But the implication was clear. She was trying to make me look unfit, unstable, maybe even dangerous. It worked. 2 officers came out to inspect the home. They found nothing wrong. But the damage was done. My neighbors started pulling away. The pastor at church avoided eye contact. The clerk at the hardware store called me sir instead of Carl. Even Peter, my son-in-law, stopped returning my texts. Only Milo wrote me a letter. "Grandpa, I miss you. Mommy says we can't come over right now. But I still have my dinosaur coloring book. I love you." I held the paper in my hands for hours. I didn't care about the land anymore. I cared about what I was losing that no deed could replace. One Saturday evening, I drove into town for groceries. I hadn't been out in days. The store was quiet. A few people pretending not to stare as I pushed my cart past the canned soup aisle. That's when I saw her. Lauren. Standing near the milk section, phone in one hand, sunglasses on her head. She looked up and saw me, and for the first time in months, her face softened. Just slightly. Dad. Lauren. We stood there, the cold air from the freezer humming between us like a barrier neither one of us could cross. I didn't want it to go this far, she said. Then why did you take it there? She swallowed hard. Do you know how hard it's been? Living paycheck to paycheck? Trying to give Milo a better life while watching you sit on 100 acres of dirt you don't even use. That dirt raised you, and it's keeping me buried. Her voice trembled. You don't understand, Dad. I've got debt. Peter's out of work. We're drowning. And every time I look at that land, all I can see is a future we could have if you just let go. I looked at her, my daughter, my angry, desperate daughter, and saw something I hadn't seen in months. Fear. Real fear. I lowered my voice. Then why not ask me? Why forge my name? Because you would have said no, she snapped. Then softened again. And I couldn't take another no. Not from you. Not after everything. I was quiet for a long moment. Then, you broke my heart, Lauren. She blinked. You broke mine a long time ago. We didn't speak again after that. Not for a while. The court date came. She didn't show. Her lawyer did. Tried to claim power of attorney. Claimed I had memory lapses. Tried to convince the judge that I was incapable of managing the land. But David came prepared. Records, evaluations, testimony from my doctor, all confirming I was mentally sound. The judge ruled in my favor. The sale was voided. The land stayed mine. But there was no joy in it. No triumph. Just an empty quiet as I walked out of the courthouse, wind lifting dust across the pavement like ashes. Fall came. Then winter. I didn't hear from Lauren again. Not on Thanksgiving. Not on Christmas. Not when the first snow covered the north field, the place where her mother used to plant sunflowers. Peter sent a short message on New Year's Day. We've moved out of state. Lauren found work in Arizona. Milo's doing well. That was it. No address. No phone number. Just gone. I sat on the porch that night, bundled in wool, sipping black coffee under a blanket of stars, and I wondered if I'd ever see her again. If she'd ever bring Milo back. If she'd ever forgive me. Or if she even should. Winter gave way to spring, and with it, the familiar routines returned: slow mornings, coffee on the porch, fence repairs, and letters to nowhere. I kept writing to Milo. Once a month, I'd fold a letter into a plain envelope and mail it to their old address, knowing it would probably get returned. But hope is a stubborn thing. I never stopped signing off the same way. Love, Grandpa. Always. I tried to stay busy. The land needed tending. The barn roof had a new leak. A raccoon chewed through the chicken wire. Little things. Things that used to make me feel needed. But I didn't feel needed anymore. Not by anyone who shared my blood. One rainy morning, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the worn surface. Every groove in the wood felt like a memory. Lauren's high chair used to sit here. Her laughter once echoed through this kitchen. Now silence pressed down like a weight. I missed her. Not the woman who stormed out. Not the one who stole from me. I missed my daughter. The one who held my hand when her mother died. The one who asked me to braid her hair before school. The one who wrote me poems for Father's Day. I don't know when I lost her. I only know I did. The days grew longer. The fields bloomed again. I had just finished mowing the back pasture one late afternoon when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A blue sedan pulled into the driveway. My heart jumped. I wiped the sweat from my brow and walked to the front steps, unsure if I was hoping or dreading what I'd find. The door opened. It wasn't Lauren. It was Peter. He looked thinner, a little older, worn down in the way men get when life doesn't stop kicking. And in the back seat, Milo. He was bigger, taller, his hair longer, but those same curious eyes. I stepped off the porch and met them halfway. Peter gave a quiet nod. He asked to see you. I knelt, arms open, and Milo ran into them. He hugged me tight, the way children do when they still believe love can fix anything. I missed you so much, Grandpa. I choked back tears. I missed you too, buddy. Peter cleared his throat. We're in town for a few days. I thought you two could spend some time. I looked at him, searching. What about Lauren? She doesn't know we're here. We spent the weekend together, just Milo and me. We fished down by the creek, roasted marshmallows in the fire pit, and I told him stories about when his mom was his age, how she used to chase fireflies in the same field, how she once climbed the barn roof and refused to come down until I brought her a cookie. He laughed. Mom did that. Oh, She did a lot worse. We didn't talk about what happened. He didn't ask. I didn't offer. But when he hugged me goodnight that Sunday, he said, "Don't be sad anymore, Grandpa. I still love you, even if Mommy's mad." And that broke me, because he was too young to carry that kind of burden, to try and fix what grown-ups had broken. Peter picked him up Monday morning. We stood under the porch as they packed. "He keeps asking about the land," Peter said quietly. "About the sunflower field." I nodded. "He doesn't understand why we don't live here anymore. Why his mom won't come back." I hesitated. "Why did she do it, Peter?" He looked at me. "Because she was scared. Because pride is louder than guilt. Because she convinced herself you'd never forgive her." I swallowed hard. "She's wrong." I told her that. A month passed. Then two. Milo's visit left something aching inside me, a hollow that wouldn't heal. I started writing to Lauren. Not letters full of blame. Just pieces of my heart. I told her about the barn. About the dogwood tree blooming early this year. About how Milo asked me if he could plant sunflowers next time. About how I missed her. I never mailed the letters. I just wrote them. Like prayers I wasn't sure anyone was listening to. Then one day, late summer, I came in from the field to find something on the porch. A box. No return address. Inside was a photo album, old leather cover, worn at the edges. I opened it and gasped. Pictures of Lauren. As a baby. A toddler. In overalls and pigtails, grinning at the barn. Her first bike ride. Her graduation. Her wedding. Me holding Milo for the first time. And tucked between the pages a note. "I don't know how to fix this, but I miss who we were. Love. Lauren." I sat down right there on the porch and cried. Not because everything was better, but because maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. 2 weeks later, she came home. It wasn't dramatic. No tears. No shouting. Just a knock on the door one Saturday morning. I opened it to find her standing there, holding a pie in both trembling hands. Her eyes were red. "I didn't know what else to bring," she whispered. "Blueberry?" I asked, smiling. She nodded. "You remembered my favorite." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one we'd argued over. There was silence at first, but not cold, just careful. "I didn't come to ask for anything," she said. "I know. I just wanted to see the field." I nodded. "Let's go." We walked the path behind the barn. The sunflowers had returned, tall, golden, stubborn like us. She stood there a long time, wind in her hair. "I planted some of these with Mom." "I know," I said quietly. She turned to me. "Can Milo help plant them next year?" "Of course." And that was the beginning. Not the end. Fall came again. This time, it brought healing. We weren't perfect. Some things don't unbreak. But Lauren started calling. Then visiting. Sometimes she'd bring Peter. Sometimes just Milo. I rewrote my will. I didn't give the land to her outright. But I put it in a family trust. One that Milo would inherit. One that Lauren could help manage, as long as she stayed honest. And she did. She worked hard to prove she'd changed. Not with grand gestures, but small things. Helping clean the barn. Showing up for Sunday dinner. Remembering my birthday. Bringing Milo to help plant the next batch of sunflowers. And every time we stood in that field, I remembered the Sunday brunch that broke us. And the long, winding path that brought us back. The weeks that followed weren't without tension. We danced around certain topics, the forgery, the court case, the things we'd both said in anger. But there was something new in the way Lauren moved around the house now. She wiped the counters after coffee. She folded the old quilt in the den without being asked. She paused longer in front of family photos. One evening, we stood together in the tool shed. I was organizing my sockets, everything still labeled, still in the same red metal box I'd kept since 1982. Lauren leaned against the doorway. "You know, I used to think this place was a prison." I didn't look up. "What changed?" She picked up a rusted horseshoe from the wall. I realized it was a home, and I ran from it because I was afraid of needing it. I nodded, still pretending to be focused on my tools. "I'm sorry, Dad. Not just for what I did, but for what I stopped seeing. For letting money and fear make me forget who you are." I finally looked at her. She was crying, but quietly. No drama this time. Just honest grief. I walked over, wrapped my arms around her, and said, "It's never too late, sweetheart. Not for us." Word of her return spread slowly through town. People at the grocery store stopped asking about her with those quiet, suspicious looks. One Sunday, she came with me to church, sat in the pew where her mother used to sit. The pastor greeted her warmly, like he'd been waiting for that moment a long time. By Christmas, She and Peter had decided to move back to the area, not into my house, but into a small rental 2 miles down the road. Close enough to visit, far enough to feel independent. She found work at the local clinic. Peter picked up jobs fixing fences and hauling feed. They started paying their debts off piece by piece and never once asked me for money again. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch together after dinner. The same porch where she once walked away from me. Now she came back in silence, or with pie, or just to sit with her head on my shoulder like she used to as a girl. "I missed this view," she said one evening. "The view missed you too," I replied. She chuckled. "You always say corny things like that. Only when my daughter forgets how much I love her." She went quiet for a long time, then whispered, "I forgot a lot of things, didn't I?" "Only for a while." In the spring, Milo and I built a birdhouse together. A red one, with a crooked roof and a pinecone chimney. He insisted it was for Grandma, so we nailed it to the oak tree near the sunflower patch. Later that day, I found Lauren standing in front of it, her hands tucked into her sweater sleeves. "She would have loved this," she said softly. "She would have loved seeing us here, together." She nodded. Then she looked up at me, eyes glossy. "Do you ever think she'd be ashamed of me? Of what I did?" I stepped closer, put a hand on her shoulder. "Your mother was many things, but she never held a grudge. You were her son, even in your storms." Lauren wiped a tear. Sometimes I still hear her voice. "So do I." She smiled, the smallest one, the kind that feels like sunlight cracking through clouds. That summer, the three of us, Lauren, Milo, and I, planted a full acre of sunflowers. She picked the seeds. Milo dug the holes. I did the watering. It felt like something sacred, like laying down roots that could heal. Every weekend, people from town would drive by, stop, take photos. The story got out, not the ugly parts, not the court, the betrayal, the shouting, but the redemption, the forgiveness. The land became more than soil. It became a symbol, a place where something broken was made whole again. One afternoon in July, I found a folded piece of paper taped to the fridge. It was in Milo's handwriting, uneven but full of effort. "Thank you for not giving up on Mom." Underneath, a little drawing, me, Lauren, and him, standing in front of a giant sunflower. All smiling, all holding hands. I taped it to the fridge door. It's still there now. By fall, Lauren had joined the local land conservation board. She wanted to help protect other families from what almost happened to ours. She gave talks about estate planning, about keeping farmland in family hands. She never mentioned me by name, but she always said, "This story is personal." Peter smiled more now. He'd gotten a job teaching woodshop at the high school. He even helped me restore the old tractor. Sometimes I'd catch him watching Lauren in the garden, like he was remembering why he married her. Milo started calling the sunflower patch Grandma's meadow. He'd run through it in rubber boots, chasing bees, yelling at the top of his lungs, "I'm the Sunflower King." I'd laugh until my ribs hurt. One day, late October, I sat down with Lauren in the kitchen. The light outside was amber, catching dust in the air like gold. "I want you to know," I said, "that I've changed the trust again." She looked up, wary. "I've named you executor. You'll manage the land when I'm gone." She shook her head. "Dad, no. I don't deserve that." "Yes, you do. But you came back. That matters more than anything you ever took." Tears welled in her eyes. "What if I fail again? Then you get back up, like you did this time." She reached across the table, took my hand, and said something I'd waited a long time to hear. "Thank you for not giving up on me." That night, I lit a candle in the window. The same window I used to wait by, wondering if my daughter would ever come home. Now I lit it not in hope, but in thanks. She had come home, and the light was still burning. Spring arrived like an apology, gentle and full of color. The land came alive again, wildflowers blooming along the fence line, birds returning to the trees, the creek running full after the thaw. But for me, spring was also the season of waiting. Waiting for a call, waiting for a knock, waiting for my daughter to finally come back, not in guilt or shame, but in truth as the girl I raised, not the stranger who'd betrayed me. And then, one afternoon, it happened. I was sitting on the porch oiling my boots when a silver car rolled down the driveway. I didn't recognize it at first, but when the door opened and I saw the way she stepped out, clutching a pie like it might fall apart in her hands, I knew. Lauren. Her hair was pulled back like her mother used to wear it. Her eyes were red, but steady. She didn't speak right away, just walked to the steps and looked at me, pie trembling in her grip. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me," she said softly. "I've been waiting," I said. She nodded, swallowed hard, and held the pie out. "Blueberry, like Mom used to make." I took it gently. "Come inside." The silence in the kitchen wasn't awkward. It was thick, but not bitter, like a storm had passed and left stillness in its wake. We sat at the table, the same table where it had all started to unravel months ago. I set down the pie. "You baked this." "I tried. It's not perfect." "It doesn't have to be." She exhaled. "Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I spoke to you. For the papers. For the lies." Her hands trembled in her lap. I thought I was doing what I had to do. We were drowning. Peter had lost his job. I was working double shifts. The debt collectors were calling every day. And I kept looking at this place, all this land, and I got angry. I convinced myself you were being stubborn, that you were holding on to something dead. She looked up. "But I was wrong. You weren't clinging to the past. You were protecting something alive." I didn't speak. I just let her talk. "I betrayed you. I forged your name. I tried to steal from you, and you had every right to hate me." I leaned forward. "Lauren, I never hated you. I was hurt, but I never stopped being your father." She wiped her eyes, and for a moment, I saw the little girl who used to crawl into my lap after bad dreams. "Can we start over?" she whispered. I nodded. "We can try." From that day on, she came by more often. At first it was awkward short visits, polite conversation, helping in the garden. But slowly, something began to soften between us. One Saturday morning, we stood in the old barn together. I was dusting off an old saddle when she walked in, holding a cup of coffee. "I used to think this barn was haunted," she laughed. "Remember? I used to scream every time I saw the owl nest." I smiled. "You made me climb up and exorcise it with a flashlight." She laughed again, a real laugh. And it felt like something healing in the space between us. That afternoon, she helped me dig fence posts. Her hands weren't used to the work anymore, but she didn't complain. Just wiped the sweat from her brow and said, "I forgot how good this feels." 2 weeks later, Peter and Milo came too. Peter didn't say much at first. He looked at the land like it might judge him. But Milo ran straight to me, wrapped his arms around my legs, and said, "Grandpa, I'm going to help with the sunflowers." We planted a row behind the house, just like his mother used to. He dropped seeds crookedly and sang while he did it. "I'm planting a whole army of flowers." Lauren and I watched him, her hand resting on my shoulder. "He's happy here," she said. "So was his mom." She nodded. "I want him to know this place, to remember it." By June, they were visiting every weekend. Lauren started cleaning out her old room upstairs. She found boxes of letters her mother had written, old dresses, even a toy horse I thought we'd lost. "This house is a museum of my childhood," she said once. "But it doesn't feel stuck anymore. It feels alive again." We took Milo fishing. Peter and I fixed the porch swing. Lauren and I spent one long Sunday afternoon repainting the old white trim around the barn. She kept humming. Same tune her mother used to. Still, there were quiet moments when she'd grow distant. Once, I found her standing at the far end of the north field, arms crossed, eyes far away. "You okay?" I asked. I was thinking about that day, the Sunday brunch, the way I looked at you, the things I said. I walked up beside her. "It's behind us." She shook her head. "It isn't. Not really. It lives in me. I need to know. Why did you fight me so hard on the land? Why not just give it to me?" I took a breath. "Because I loved you too much to let you take it that way. I needed you to remember why it mattered. This land, it holds our story, not just crops and fences. Love, loss, joy, roots. If I had handed it over in fear, I would have been saying it didn't mean anything anymore." She nodded slowly. "And now I see you're ready to understand it. Not just take it. Protect it." She turned to me, eyes shining. "I want to earn back your trust. You already are." In July, I updated the family trust. I didn't give her the land outright. That wasn't the point anymore. But I named her the steward, the protector. She'd manage it for Milo one day, for her grandchildren, if there were any, for the story. When I told her, she didn't say a word, just stood in the kitchen, eyes wide, then hugged me tighter than she had in years. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For believing I could come back." One late summer evening, we all sat on the porch, me, Lauren, Peter, and Milo. The sun was setting in orange streaks over the field. The sunflowers were blooming tall. Milo rested his head in my lap, holding a jar of lightning bugs. Lauren sipped tea. You know, she said, I never thought this would be possible. What? Peace. Peter took her hand. I looked out at the land, the same view I'd seen every day for decades, and yet tonight it looked new. Maybe because this time it was full of possibility. Not fear, not bitterness, just family. Together again. The summer passed like a slow breath, warm, golden, and full of second chances. By late August, the sunflower field behind the barn had become the heart of the farm. Milo dubbed it Grandma's Garden and insisted every visitor take a tour. He'd walk them down the rows, pointing out the tallest stalks like a curator showing off masterpieces. This one bloomed on my birthday, he'd say proudly. That one bent because of the wind, but Grandpa said it's still strong. Just like Mom. Lauren smiled every time he said it. Sometimes she'd cry quietly afterward when she thought no one was watching. But I was always watching. Not judging, just marveling at how far we'd all come. One night, as the crickets sang and the cicadas buzzed in the trees, Lauren brought out a photo album. The same one she had mailed me before coming home. We sat in the living room, the old lamp casting a soft light on the pages. There was her mother laughing in a hammock. There was Lauren missing her front teeth, hugging a baby calf. There was me, younger, stronger, holding her on my shoulders in front of the barn, both of us squinting into the sun. Do you think she'd be proud of us? Lauren asked suddenly. I didn't hesitate. I know she would. I wish I could tell her I'm sorry. She always knew your heart, even when it was lost. Lauren closed the album, laid her hand over the cover. I want to protect this. Not just for me. For Milo. For the next generation. You are. That September, we decided to host a harvest gathering. It wasn't fancy. Just some hay bales, pie, and music from an old speaker. We invited neighbors, old friends, even folks from town who had stopped talking to us after everything went wrong. To my surprise, most of them came. Even Martha, the woman from church who once whispered that I might be losing my mind. She brought her famous apple cobbler and gave Lauren a long, tearful hug. I was wrong, she told her. You're stronger than any of us knew. Milo put on a little show with 3 sunflowers taped to a stick and sang a song about being king of the garden. Everyone laughed and clapped. Peter filmed it, tears in his eyes. When the sun dipped low and the sky turned orange, Lauren climbed onto the porch steps and cleared her throat. Can I say something? She asked. The crowd quieted. I made mistakes, she said. Big ones. The kind that tear families apart. But this land forgives. It grows back. And I think maybe we can too. People clapped again, gently. Not with obligation, but with belief. Later, I found her sitting alone under the oak tree where her childhood dog was buried. You okay? I asked. She looked up, wiped her eyes. I think for the first time in years I really am. Fall gave way to winter, but this time, the cold didn't bring loneliness. Lauren started coming over to bake bread. Peter fixed the fence that kept sagging near the west gate. Milo built a snowman in the front yard and named it Farmer Frosty. On Christmas Eve, we lit candles and placed one in every window, a tradition her mother started the year Lauren was born. As we stood by the window, looking out at the glowing farmhouse wrapped in quiet snow, she slipped her arm around me. I used to be afraid this house would trap me, she said. Now I think it saved me. I smiled. It's not the house. It's what you remembered in it. She nodded. And who I came back to. By January, she and Peter had purchased a small parcel of land adjacent to mine. Just 5 acres, but theirs. We want to build something of our own, she said. Not to leave you behind. Just to grow beside you. That meant more to me than she probably knew. We started sketching plans for a small guest house. Milo helped dig out the first line with his plastic shovel, even though it didn't dent the ground much. I'm gonna live here forever, he said proudly, and plant even more sunflowers than Grandpa. I chuckled. I'll hold you to that. In the months that followed, we worked side by side. I taught Lauren how to prune the orchard. She taught me how to use a spreadsheet. I showed Peter how to change the oil in the tractor. He taught me how to order fence wire online without paying triple. Every day felt like a piece of something bigger being put back together, not just our family, but our identity, our story. One evening in March, Lauren walked into the living room holding a folder. What's this? I asked. A conservation easement, she said. I talked to a lawyer. If you want, We can protect this land legally. No one will ever be able to sell it to developers. Not me. Not Milo. Not anyone. It'll always be farmland. I stared at the papers, a lump in my throat. You really want that? I want to make sure it stays sacred. I signed the documents the next day. When the daffodils bloomed and the soil warmed, Milo came running into the house, cheeks flushed. Grandpa, the first sunflower sprouted. You have to see. We ran outside, and there it was, just a tiny green shoot breaking the earth, stretching up like it remembered the sky. Lauren knelt beside it, her hand lightly brushing the soil around the stem. It's a good sign, she whispered. And it was. Because it meant new life. New beginnings. On the 1-year anniversary of that awful brunch, we did something simple. We had brunch again. Same table. Same chairs. Same sunlight pouring through the windows. But this time, it was different. No shouting. No demands. Just laughter, bacon, and fresh orange juice. Milo held up his glass of milk. To Grandpa, he said, for keeping the farm and the family. We all toasted. Even Lauren. And when I looked around, that table really looked, I saw not just what had been broken, but what had been rebuilt. Stronger. Wiser. Still growing. Now, as I write this, the sunflower field is golden again. Milo is drawing in the dirt with a stick. Peter's tightening the hinges on the barn. And Lauren, my daughter, my fiercest wound and greatest miracle, is walking toward me with 2 mugs of coffee. I brought the good stuff, she says with a smile. I take the mug and look at the land, the light, the family. I've got everything I need, I say. Because it's true. This land is more than inheritance. It's redemption. It's forgiveness. It's home. And we are whole again.